Picture this, one of the biggest AAA titles in the gaming industry comes out with a sequel after 2 years of no new content and you're more hyped than ever to play the new hero. And that hero is, of course, Kiriko. We all saw Kiriko's animated shorts, and if you're lucky, you saw the unfinished version of the short that got leaked. Either way, you sat in one of three camps. You were either extremely hyped to jump back into Overwatch and give the hero a new try, an Overwatch veteran who's finally glad to see a drip of content, or a completely new player faced with having to unfortunately lend Blizzard your credit card details to buy the battle pass and unlock Kiriko. But regardless of which camp you are in, hype and adrenaline carries across all three. As a result, there's clear appeal for wanting to play Kiriko in the first place, and at the beginning of your Kiriko journey, you're likely very incompetent at the hero. But of course you don't care because the new hero. Kiriko players at this level either heal bot completely and throw one kunai every 5 decades, or they try and go for the DPS playstyle and end up missing all of their kunais, almost no in between. You barely use your teleport, and when you do, it's when your teammates are about to die and feed. You constantly waste your Suzu and use it off cooldown, and when you land a decent Kitsune rush, you miss every single one of your kunais. And as the hype begins to die down as the season progresses, you're faced with a choice to make. We're a week or two into the first season of Overwatch 2, and as the Overwatch 2 hype dies down, and as you've racked up some time on Kiriko, either from release or when you've unlocked the hero later down, a few things appear apparent to you. Firstly, Kiriko's skill curve is bloody harsh. Mechanically, she's difficult. Positionally, she's difficult. Game sense wise, she's difficult. There's almost no easy aspect to her kit, barring a healbot oriented playstyle, which to be frank, other heroes can do better at that sort of playstyle than Kiriko. And this is where you have to evaluate whether you want to sink in the time learning this new, foreign, and difficult hero to the game. And this is where a lot of players, including myself, decide that it's not a worthwhile investment. There's other supports out there, like Brig, who's pretty decent at the moment, whose skill is less so in mechanics and more so in positioning, cooldown usage, and awareness, similar to Mercy. There's Ana, who's got some of the best utility in the game, Baptiste, who has more consistent damage and sustain than Kiriko, and Moira, who is already known as being one of the lowest skill floor and skill ceiling heroes in the game. For me personally, I chose Brig since she's a relatively versatile support who has by far the best peeling in the game, but others may choose heroes who are more rewarding initially, or heroes that feel more safe or comfortable to play, as I'll get onto in the next stage. Perhaps you're just a tank or a DPS player who gave the hero a new try, didn't really fancy the skill curve, and decided to return back to your normal role. So two things either happen to the future Kiriko main. They either decide that Kiriko is a fun enough addition to add to their own hero pool, or they give Kiriko a break and later learn that Kiriko is actually a really strong addition to their hero pool. But for now, we move on to the next stage. For those who decided that they did indeed want to become a Kiriko main, they end up playing the hero in quite a safe fashion. Not to say there's anything particularly bad about their playstyle, but it's very autopilot-esque. They'll likely continue to heal bot in their games, using Suzu casually, and perhaps not even leveraging their teleport at all in order to take better positions on the map. For those who decided that Kiriko is simply too difficult of a hero to learn, this is also a form of safety. Going back to the heroes that you're comfortable with instead of enduring the tenuous process of trial and error when it comes to learning a new hero. In short, they play things too safe when it comes to their hero pool, and as a result, they end up being proof of the mere exposure effect. The fact that humans prefer certain things or environments purely because they're familiar with them. Seeing a high skill hero as your average gold or plat player can be daunting to some, but for others, just like in the former group of people, they just play Kiriko because of the interesting hero design. But either way, you end up coming to a realization. This is the point in your Kiriko journey where you realize something, that Kiriko is actually broken as shit. You see all these videos pop up in your YouTube feed, particularly those tier lists that always appear at the beginning of a new season that keep on telling you that Kiriko is an A or S tier meta-defining hero. And there's a reason why content creators unanimously agree that Kiriko is a borderline broken hero. It's her versatility. She can seemingly do everything everywhere all at once thanks to her mobility. At one point, she can be on a flank supporting a DPS, then in the next second, she can be peeling and protecting her other support with her Suzu, and then the second after that, she can be running down the enemy team with one of the best ultimates in the game, being her Kitsune rush. It's at this point you realise that if you start to take things seriously, you can actually climb some rank. And if you were one of those people that initially gave Kiriko a go and decided that she's not for you, this is likely what convinces you to give the Fox Girl another shot. This stage is definitely where most of the growth of the Kiriko main is seen with respect to their gameplay. If you're a Kiriko main, you've almost certainly searched up Kiriko guide into the YouTube search bar at least once, clicking the guide with the highest view count of course. You'll likely have watched Demo7's Kiriko guide, IOStox's Kiriko guide, and or Karq's Kiriko tips video. But if you're still unsatisfied and looking for even more juicy Kiriko advice, you'll do a little more digging. You might have come across my own Kiriko guide talking about the hero, some of Spylo's stuff also talking about the hero, or you'll take a trip to Reddit or Discord to ask for more help. And just like with any other hero, if you really want to put your improvement on the fast track, you'll seek out some form of coaching, either by a highly respected, qualified coach, which will drive them insane considering Kiriko coaching is high in demand, or by going to the depths of Reddit and Discord, posting a replay code or two, and seeing what advice you get. After finally learning and integrating some of the information into your own gameplay, you start to notice some improvements. Similar to Baptiste, you try your best to interweave both of your firing modes to optimize the hero. You might actually stray away from your tank once every now and then, especially if you're running another main healer, to threaten some off-angle pressure, and if you get threatened on that off-angle, you just teleport back to your team. You start taking into account the bigger picture of things with your playstyle in accordance with your own and the enemy team's composition. For example, against comps with high range but low mobility, like sniper comps, you can actually go on really deep flanks looking to two-shot someone like a Widowmaker before teleporting back to your team. If you're running a very brawly comp like a Lucio, Kiriko, Ryan kind of thing, you lean more into farming your Kitsune rush as fast as you can, whilst also looking for small gaps to teleport aggressively and get use out of your kunais. And of course, over time, your mechanics will also improve. This stage of Kiriko is really one that lasts for your entire journey on the hero, but it's at this point where you'll see the most gains. Think of it like newbie gains when you first start going to the gym. And just like going to the gym, you'll start seeing some results soon within the first few weeks of actively trying to get better at the hero. Because of how powerful Kiriko was, and frankly still is, just after seeing a little bit of improvement in their own gameplay, the ranks start flying upwards. Coupled with the dodgy Overwatch 2 matchmaking, and the supposed rankflation that hit Overwatch Season 2 and Season 3, it's no surprise that players who are once silver, gold or platinum climb 1, 2 or even 3 ranks in some cases. Their win percentage starts sticking up, their healing and damage per 10 also start to take a notable increase, and their overall satisfaction is pretty high. Maybe every now and then they'll have to swap to a different hero to fit a different situation, but their improvement, skill, and general motivation increase once they hit that exponential boom in rank. But unfortunately, this can only last for so long. Just as with almost every piece of exponential growth to ever exist, there will always be a plateau. And for the Kiriko main, they'll eventually hit a ceiling where it gets harder and harder to improve, and as a result, it becomes harder and harder to climb. Every little error you make gets amplified even more, and you struggle finding ways to innovate how you play. You might go full desperation mode, doing these high risk, high reward flanks, which can be good, but they often are dependent on each situation, and you'll often mistime these flanks with your team, feeding your brains out in the process. And even worse, tilt, frustration, and anger can arise, which can send you on a downward spiral, going on chunky loss streaks. Overall, there's a greater tendency to flame or be flamed, a greater tendency to lose more games and equalise out your win percentage, as well as making little micro mistakes like just missing out on the timing of your Suzu or making a very high risk teleport. But it's not all doom and gloom. Now, unlike other mains like Genji mains or hitscan mains, there typically isn't a huge vial of toxicity from the average Kiriko main. Sure, there's frustration, but not pure degeneracy. More often than not, that frustration built up at the Plataeu stage leads to the Kiriko player contemplating, questioning, and doubting their future on the hero. This doubt that arises can result in contemplating a few options. Firstly, perhaps the Kiriko main is satisfied in their rank climb and the skill they've attained, and as a result, they decide to not pour more arrows into becoming the best of the best. Maybe they become a bit more casual, or maybe they choose to play and learn other heroes to get their skill up to par. But there's also the second option. They embark on the path to enter the top 1% of the player base. They're determined to not settle for mediocrity of merely being above average, and decides to learn as many aspects of their hero as possible in order to become the best of the best. In this stage, the Kiriko player finally looks inwards, with some players not only determined to be a better player, but also being a better person. They realise that, in some, if not most cases, the reasons for their losses stems from within their own play rather than from their teammates. If a game happens to be lost from spawn, GG's and on to the next one. Improvement is also back in full swing here, passively or actively seeking advice to improve their own gameplay, scouring the internet for more in-depth advice if they haven't done so already from stage 5. They realise that, even if Kiriko was to be deemed a weak meta pick, it ultimately doesn't matter in a game like Overwatch 2. The philosophy of how you play, instead of what you play, rings louder than ever. At this point, the Kiriko main is practically god tier, that much has been established. Even though the hero's been out for only a few months, Kiriko is already one of their most played heroes and will likely have triple digit hours in overall playtime. They'll certainly be rocking the Amaterasu skin too, or the goth one if you're horny. Regardless, their skill is clearly undisputed. Every single Kitsune rush sends shivers into the enemy team, with a playstyle that treads the fine line between carrying and feeding. It's also likely that the Kiriko player will be in some high level team at this stage, if not now then in one of the stages prior. They understand the strengths and the weaknesses of their hero, when to play split from your team and when to play more conservative, when to Suzu and when not to waste it, when to aggressively teleport or use it as a get out of jail free card, and of course, they hit a surprising amount of kunai headshots and duels. If you yourself would like some help in climbing through these Kiriko stages one by one, feel free to check out my Kiriko guide if you haven't already. It's a very useful starting point, even if you're in the higher ranks. And if you guys enjoyed this 10 stages video, be sure to subscribe, comment and like, and let me know which one to do next. Until next time.